What happened here today was an insurrection incited by the President of the United States. Now, these are not the words of some woke lefty Democrat. This is Mitt Romney, who stood for president for the Republicans in 2012. Removal of an unfit president for office and impeachment proceedings apparently again are on the way. There are only a few days to go. Have the actions of his supporters finally cooked the orange man's burrito? People of the free world, it's law cracking time. So welcome to 2021. Same different year, right? Most of us can't leave our homes, hospitals are at bursting point. Oh, and did I mention some lunatics have just invaded the United States government buildings at the Capitol? What's crazier than that is in a series of tweets, President Donald Trump himself actively appears to have encouraged the invasion. He held a rally the day before. He repeated the claims of election fraud and he told his supporters, fight like hell, take our country back, and then said, I'm going to be with you. We're going to walk down to the Capitol and stop them. When the supporters became violent, he delayed sending out the National Guard. Initially, he just asked them in a tweet to be non-violent, but he also praised them and said, I love you. At the time we're recording this, 4 of the rioters are dead and a police officer's also been killed. Of course, that evening he was rowing back and condemning the intruders in what was clearly a pre-written television address. Of course, by then his Twitter account had been suspended. Meanwhile, the world has quickly turned on Donald J. Trump for the first time on all sides. He's been condemned by many in his own party and of course, predictably, by President-elect Joe Biden. So the knives are out. The early talk has been about using the 25th Amendment to have him declared unfit for office. Now, this amendment to the US Constitution is relatively recent, but it's not designed to deal with a president who behaves terribly. It's a series of rules that exist for the transfer of power to the vice president for the next few days until January the 20th. This man, Mike Pence, who doesn't say very much, but is apparently extremely religious. Now, this amendment exists because of the possibility of a scenario in which a president becomes ill as a result of injury or some kind of incapacity. Think, for example, of the period of uncertainty as JFK's tragic death was unfolding, or in more recent times when Ronald Reagan had a colon operation in 1985 and temporarily transferred power to the vice president. And in fact, later in 2002, when George W. Bush also had a colon operation, he did the same. Wait a minute. Colon operation, 25th Amendment, Donald Trump, QAnon. Is this a mere coincidence? Lawcracker senses the grim and fateful hand of the Illuminati. We seem to be back. The 25th Amendment deals mainly with incapacity. Really, its reason for existing has been illness, and in fact, the word used in most of the legal discussion is inability or disability. But if we go to the text of the amendment, it's actually fairly open language. The key phrase is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. Unable. Now, that has to be the view of the vice president, who is a Republican, and more than half of the cabinet for it to even get off the ground. After that, it then needs to be agreed by a majority of 2/3 in both the Senate and Congress. And this is the key to why it will fail. It may well be that even Trump's cabinet agree that this guy needs to be out of office. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they will abuse the spirit of an amendment that exists to deal with a sick or unable president rather than one that everybody hates. It'll tarnish the Republican Party, won't it, in some people's eyes, if they abuse the 25th Amendment in that way, not by the letter, but by the spirit and intention of why it exists in the first place. And the Republican Party membership would be required to provide their support. They just won't do that. It may be possible to say he's unfit for office or he doesn't have the ability to govern, but that's not really what's meant by the 25th Amendment, and the Republican Party will never support it. So if that isn't happening, what about impeachment? Well, it's a bit easier. For impeachment, all you need is a simple congressional majority, more than 50%, and again, 2/3 of the Senate. But does anyone remember how long that stuff took? Years of talking about it and months of the proceedings themselves. At the time of filming this, we've got about 10 days. Not a chance in hell that's going to be happening. So as far as removing Trump from office during his presidency is concerned, the chances are virtually nil. However, there's a possibility that he could be prosecuted after the event. Richard Nixon took advice when he was in a similar sticky situation some years ago about whether he could pardon himself, and the answer he himself received was a flat no. Watch this space for what might happen to Trump afterwards. It'll be a political decision as well as a legal one, of course. Remember just 4 years ago, how all the Republican rhetoric about proceeding against Hillary Clinton, lock her up and all of that stuff, soon as Trump accedes to power, they all disappear. And that's kind of often what happens. The US does not have a history of prosecuting past presidents. But we're talking about Donald Trump, the president who defies convention. The rules don't apply to him. Will his final notable acts include standing trial for high crimes committed in the last days of his presidency? And don't forget his demented followers who stormed the Capitol, apparently honestly thinking they were taking back the country on behalf of the free and the righteous, being patriots. What of them? They will face trial, many will be imprisoned. But Donald Trump will be far away, maybe at the top of one of his golden towers, reminiscing about his years in the highest office in the world and what an exciting adventure he had. This was the Lawcracker. Tell me what you think. Is Donald Trump going to make it through his final days? Has he even done anything wrong? Are QAnon... Please don't talk to me about QAnon in the comments. I have to say that the comments that I get, it massively motivates me to do more of this legal content. A lot of you have liked, a lot of you have shared. Thank you very much, guys. Peace.